Welcome to Morning Joe Weekend on this Saturday morning. Let's get you caught up on the big stories of the week. Why is Tulsi Gabbard there? I don't know. But, a lot of the cheating comes from, it's international cheating. You have people, they say, from China. We have our Director of National and International Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, who's doing a great job. Where's Tulsa? She took a lot of heat 2 days ago because she went in at Pam's insistence. She went in and she looked at votes. President Trump yesterday explaining that Attorney General Pam Bondi sent Tulsa Gabbard to Fulton County, Georgia last week for the FBI's raid of an election office. Okay, that's one. Okay, that's one take on it. But on Wednesday, he told NBC News he didn't know why the Director of National Intelligence was there. The shifting stories, that's two. He about 4, 5, 6. There are several different stories on why she was actually there. Look at this. I'm seriously, are you guys kidding me? Tulsi Gabbard down in Georgia, seizing voting. Are you really? Are you this stupid picking up the phone? Are you this stupid that you think you're going to get away with it? Are you this stupid? Why are you so stupid? Why do you do things that hurt Republican candidates in the state of Georgia, hurt Republican county candidates across the country, and are always overturned by judges? I've got to say, and Allie's last story was about, the president saying, okay, well, we'll give you that funding. We'll restart the funding for desperately needed transportation between New Jersey and New York to help people on both sides of the Hudson be able to commute better. If you rename Dulles Airport and Penn Station, and seriously, who would want their names on either one of those? Why don't you just ask him to rename the New York Jets after you? I can't imagine it. But again, Jonathan Lemire, the fact is that Donald Trump seizing those fines was one part of Mikey Sherrill winning by like 15 points or 14 points or however many points he won in New Jersey. The Republican candidate was gaining ground. This happened, and then poof, he spent the rest of the campaign talking about that. Now, John Oaf, this is a gift for John Oaf in Georgia. You look at New York State, it's going to be, again, critical for the Democrats taking over the House of Representatives. And here's Donald Trump saying, I'm going to keep destroying your morning commute, keep you away from your loved ones and your family and your children even longer because you won't rename really two of the worst infrastructure projects in America after me. Again, all of this is so self-defeating. And if you don't believe me, just look at the poll numbers. President Trump telling on himself there, clearly revealing doesn't travel by train very much. Otherwise, he might want to stay clear of having his name splashed on Penn Station. But you're exactly right. First of all, the Gateway Tunnel, which is what New York and New Jersey officials have wanted for decades, desperately needed link under the Hudson River, helping commuters in both states. And certainly now Governor Sherrill was grateful for that in-kind campaign donation that President Trump made late in that race this last fall because he took away that funding and in a moment of peak fit. And, it was a gift to her because it hurt people in her state. And you're right, though. This is also what Republicans have been saying to me. I wrote about it this week. We've chronicled it a few times now that President Trump, he's just taking his eye off the ball. They fear lock in on the economy, lock in on rising prices, do something about inflation or healthcare costs, whatever it might be. Things that voters are likely going to have front of mind this coming November at the midterms. And instead, Trump, first of all, didn't travel this week as his team had promised, these weekly trips to talk about the economy and campaign for Republican officials. But more than that, he seems to really care more about these legacy projects, whether it's the ballroom or the Kennedy Center. He's on a building spree throughout Washington and Willie. This would be the next, the idea that he would suddenly want to have his name on Dulles and Penn Station and threatening to keep federal funds away. Unless that happens, helps no one. In normal times, this is a massive scandal that the president won't allow a state, a municipality to have funds unless you name something after him. And as you say, you might want to pump the brakes or choose something else on Penn Station, though the new Mohan Hall is very nice. We'll stipulate that. But guys, back to Georgia for a second, we don't really have to wonder who directed Tulsi Gabbard to go there, because Tulsi Gabbard wrote in a letter to Congress that it was President Trump himself who ordered her to go to Georgia on that FBI raid. And then you'll recall after the raid, she called the President of the United States, put him on speakerphone so he could celebrate with the FBI agents who conducted the raid. So there is a pattern, Donald Trump doing something, and then when it goes bad or the reaction to it or the polling is bad, say ICE in Minneapolis, for example, he runs from it. And yesterday, as you just showed at the prayer breakfast, said, that was Pam Bondi who did that, not me. Yeah. Well, and speaking of the prayer breakfast, there's another extraordinary lost opportunity here. Here's something that, I know the people who run it, been a part of it. When I was in Congress, it was a wonderful time. Even when Bill Clinton was going through impeachment, it was we would come together, we would talk, it lessened the tensions. the president, other people would talk about their faith, and it was a good time to come together. Yesterday, you had the president attacking Republicans that voted against him. Thomas Massie especially attacking Democrats, saying, I don't know why any Christian would vote for Democrats, when in fact, because they oppose me all the time. But in fact, there are a lot of people that actually were raised in the church asking, why would anybody support so many of these Republican policies that run completely counter to Jesus's direct, unambiguous teaching? You got Mike Johnson, like Christ, explaining the Bible to the Pope because the Pope dared to actually quote Jesus's words. You could go on, and then Willie Donald Trump's coalition, the Republicans' coalition, is not crumbling from the edges. It's crumbling from the center. He's losing the independents. He's losing, of course, Democrats that may have voted for him. He's losing working Americans that voted for him in the past. And everything he's doing is causing that collapse in the center to continue and drive his numbers and Republican numbers down. And of course, overnight he put out a Truth Social post that was a racist post depicting the former president of the United States and First Lady as monkeys, as primates. And that's only going to hurt. They're sitting there thinking, oh, we're going to own the libs. Oh, we're going to make the libs mad. No, be so triggered. That's not what happens. I mean, at this stage, all you're doing is hurting the Republican Party. All you're doing is hurting your support in the center. All you're doing is making sure Democrats have a great off-year election. All you're doing is making yourself look pathetic, Republicans, for not standing up to this open racism and bigotry. Still ahead on Morning Joe, our next guest says billionaire Jeff Bezos and Washington Post publishers Will Lewis are taking steps to kill everything that makes the Washington Post special. The Atlantic's Ashley Parker joins us for more on there when a Russian missile hit a Ukrainian playground and killed 9 kids. I was there on a fishing boat in the middle of the South China Sea when Chinese Coast Guard ships showed up to assert their claim over contested territory. I was there when the Taliban tightened their grip on Afghanistan. I was there in January 2020 outside of Wuhan when China shut it down to contain a mysterious virus. I'm in Kfar Aza, one of the frontline villages that just cleared of Hamas fighters last night. International reporters are your eyes and ears around the world. Washington needs us. The world needs us. Jeff, please save us. Save the Post. God, that was part of a video posted on social media last week by the Ukraine bureau chief for the Washington Post, Siobhan O'Grady, begging billionaire Jeff Bezos not to cut the paper's foreign department. Those layoffs were among hundreds announced across several departments in a move affecting nearly 1/3 of the iconic paper staff, including some journalists still actively in the field. Reporter Lizzie Johnson wrote on X that she was laid off while still in Ukraine covering the war. I mean, come on. It really is remarkable. I'll tell you what else is remarkable. Just the heartlessness, the cruelty. It's unnecessary. He's a billionaire. It's unnecessity that I saw yesterday by people on the Magite going, what? Well, they deserved it, their work. No, seriously. No. What happened was Jeff Bezos lurched running desperately in the arms of Donald Trump after Donald Trump got elected, and he decided they were going to change. First of all, they were going to get rid of an editorial endorsing Kamala Harris at the last second, and then try to change their ideological viewpoint. Now, I mean, people can say, well, that you're only appealing to 40% of the country that might be center, probably more like 45 now, probably more like 50% of the country that's deeply disturbed by what's going on in the right. But as Gerard Baker said yesterday, 40% of the country, that's over 120, 130 million people. That's a pretty good audience to have. This was not brought on by the great reporters in the field that we just saw. This was brought on by fear from Jeff Bezos, by desperation that somehow his main interest, which, by the way, journalism, not in the top 30 for him, but his main interest actually might be damaged because of what the Washington Post dared to write, dared to report when they dared to tell. So all of this garbage about it's their own fault, the stupidity and the cruelty is crazy. This was a paper that was doing extraordinarily well just a few years ago before Jeff Bezos got scared under the leadership of Fred Ryan for a long time and Marty Baron. I mean, our next guest can tell us how successful that paper was, not only financially, but also the remarkable number of awards that they brought in for their extraordinary reporting. Let's bring right now political analyst, staff writer at The Atlantic, Ashley Parker. Her new piece is bluntly titled The Murder of the Washington Post. Ashley, feel free, take it. Go. I mean, this is something. When I was in Washington, I told Bill Moore last week that I always felt like I was getting away with something when I got to see Johnny Carson every night. When I moved to Washington D.C. and I could read the W, I could just go to a newsstand and get the Washington Post every morning. I'm like, how lucky can somebody be? It's a great paper. It was a great paper up until about a year and a half ago. Talk about what happened. I mean, I would argue first, it still is a great paper, and they are absolutely gutting it for no reason. But look, it seems very clear that Jeff Bezos wants to curry favor with Donald Trump. And, that is his right to do so. On the editorial side, it wasn't good business. It lost a lot of subscribers, but that is his right. But the irony is, if he has been reading any of his own paper's coverage of Donald Trump going back to the first term, he should understand that this is a fool's mission. Trump will never be satisfied. If the day that he is hoping to get the Blue Origin contract from NASA, they say they're doubling down on politics. There's a political story that Donald Trump doesn't like. He will still be punished. So this is all for nothing. That's the first thing. The second thing is, as an owner, Jeff Bezos deserves a competent publisher. And if his goal is to run the Post into the ground, Will Lewis isn't even equipped to do that. So he's being ill-served by his current publisher, regardless of what his mission or his goal is. But what I really wanted to capture in my piece is not just, as I write at the beginning, that we're witnessing a murder, but what makes the Post so special and what is really being lost. And this has been the Post before I got there, and this will be the Post since I've left. And even with all of these changes is sort of the pulsing humanity that is at the core of that publication, and the teamwork and the collaboration and the collegiality, and what the Post was able to do, which most major newspapers have struggled, is to sort of keep that scrappy underdog sense of fun, sense of camaraderie, sense of we really love each other and our family that you have at a local paper while operating on a national scale among the best of the best. And that's what's being lost. Immigration enforcement tactics testified at Capitol Hill at a forum yesterday. No Republicans attended the hearing. Those who spoke included the brothers of Renee Good, the Minneapolis woman fatally shot by an ICE officer last month. They described deep grief and frustration that their sister's death has not led to meaningful change, despite national outrage. In the last few weeks, our family took some consolation, thinking that perhaps Nay's death would bring about change in our country, and it has not. Other witnesses included a Chicago woman shot several times by a Customs and Border Protection officer last fall during a protest. Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia shared text messages from the officer who shot her. Miss Martinez, these are images of texts sent by the agent who shot you, and they're actually disturbing to read. But I think it's important for the public to see this. The agent linked an article about your shooting and texted, read it, 5 shots, 7 holes. I fired 5 rounds, and she had 7 holes. Put that in your book, boys. Oh, well, it is what it is. Happens. This is someone that works for the United States government. I fired 5 rounds and she had 7 holes. Now, he was talking about you, and it's our understanding that he was actually bragging about his aim shooting an unarmed American citizen. Is that right? Correct. Gunning down unarmed Americans in the street. Let me say that again. A paramilitary type force has been created by the DHS that guns down Americans in the streets of America. And here, an unarmed woman, American citizen, shot 5 times, left with 7 bullet holes in her. And what are they doing? They're bragging about it. The shooter brags about it on text, saying, I shot her 5 times, fired 5 rounds, and left 7 bullet holes in her, and then brags about it to his other. This is so beyond control. This would never be permitted. I plead with Republicans who still think this is okay or turn away, and I plead with evangelical Christians who are among some of the biggest supporters of this sort of savagery on the streets of America. What would Jesus do? Not this, not even close. Are the people celebrating and the media are mocking or ridiculing the shooting of these American citizens in the street, gunning them down, and nothing apparently is changing? We're going to continue taking you through what happened yesterday on Capitol Hill, but then we're going to show you what's still happening in Minnesota with these Keystone cops that haven't been trained, that are killing Americans in the street and continue drawing their guns. It's crazy. And Mika, they will present charges, and federal judges, one after another, will basically say, get out of my court, stop wasting my time. And now they're making the argument, lawyers on Capitol Hill, lawyers in the White House, the Fourth Amendment. What Fourth Amendment? We don't need judges to get involved. We can just kick down doors of American citizens. This is such an egregious breach of the most basic civil rights, constitutional rights of Americans. This is what the Republican Party, the small government party, was supposed to be against. This is what we fought against all the time. a creeping, growing federal government that could take away our property, that could take away our guns, that might even, oh, I don't know, shoot us because we had guns as the director of the FBI, as the Treasury Secretary, as the President of the United States. As Jeanine Pirro said a couple of days ago, if you come into my district if you come to DC with a gun, I'm going to arrest you. What? That was in 2008. There was a case called Heller. It was the first time the Supreme Court said, the Second Amendment says what it actually means. Yeah, that Americans have a right to keep and bear arms, even in the District of Columbia. Jeanine Pirro says no. She tries to clean it up. No, no, no. Too late. Too late. You let us know in a press conference what you believe. Donald Trump, Kash Patel, Scott Bessent, these people are talking like left-wing freaks. Do any of them, especially Ms. Pirro, remember January 6th? Well, I mean, a lot of weapons were brought into D.C. Well, and do they remember one state house after another state house after another state house where there were people that came with AR-15s and lined the halls of state legislature? Nobody shot them. The Biden administration didn't shoot them. And yet a Republican administration is saying, if you have guns, we have a right to kill you. If you legally have guns, we have a right to kill you. If you are in your house with your family, we have a right to kick the door down without a judicial warrant. Do you know how screwed up that is? Still ahead on Morning Joe. President Trump again is calling on Republicans to nationalize elections. Can't do that. We'll play for you. Constitutional stuff. His latest comments and the response from Republican leadership. That's just one of several stories we will discuss with former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. He joins the conversation straight ahead. Chris Christie. He's also the strategic consultant for the American Gaming Association. Governor, I want to start with you because I've always told people about a conversation we had. I think a conversation we had around the 2020 election where you said I was talking to Donald Trump in March, April, and already back then he was starting to play the game because he knew he was going to probably lose, and he started planting in your mind and other people's mind around him, this election's going to be rigged. This election's going to be rigged because he knew he was going to lose. This is deja vu all over again, isn't it? In the words of Yogi Berra, well, he thinks in one respect, guys that worked for him then, because we're still having folks who believe that argue about the 2020 election today, over 5 years later. And, he also, the other thing he did, it's kind of interesting, building off the point you were making, Joe, is that, he says, well, the write-in votes and these late votes don't go his way. Let me tell you one of the reasons they don't go his way, because back in 2020, when mail and voting became more broadly available because of Coe, he repeatedly said over and over again to his supporters, don't vote by mail. It's crooked. It's rigged. Don't vote by mail. And I could tell you that myself and other people around him kept saying, don't say that. A lot of your voters are seniors who are going to be afraid to go out to the poll because they're afraid to catch CO. And so if they won't vote by mail because you say it's crooked and the only people who do vote by mail are people who are voting against you, those numbers are going to be even worse. And I think that's a disease that still hasn't been corrected inside the Republican Party, that we still get smashed as Republicans on mail and voting in part, and I think large part because Donald Trump conditioned a large section of our voters to think that their votes wouldn't be counted. And so what I would say to him on that front is, Doctor, heal thyself. You caused a lot of this problem, and now you're trying to fix it by saying, doubling down on the idea that elections are going to be rigged in part because of mail and voting, which just, it doesn't match the facts. Chris, I don't know about you, but when I ran my 4 elections, I just absolutely wiped out Democrats in absentee voting, in mail-in voting. We focused on that, and we crushed Democrats we always knew would win, 2-1, 3-1 in early voting. That's why what you're saying makes so little sense. I mean, that Republicans are now discouraging people from voting early. I mean, hell, I would get the list of absentee voters overseas, and I would spend my nighttime, because I'm such a loser, I'd spend my nighttime calling him going, hey, this is Joe Scarborough. Thank you for your service. I would love for you, if you get a chance when you put your absentee ballot in and we had people doing that all the time and focusing on that, and the fact that they're discouraging early voters just doesn't make any sense. No, it doesn't make electoral sense in any way. And so then when it doesn't, and it starts to go the predictable way, then you've got to come up with some other excuse as to why it isn't working for you. Look, in the end, one of the most important things in our country is people's perception of fair and free elections. It doesn't mean that you can always have to agree with the result. Plenty of times I haven't agreed with the result, but the fact is that you have to believe they're free and fair elections. And as you said before, and by the way, Joe, when that graphic came up, I was thinking the same thing. You were like, wow, like MS now has parchment paper. They're putting this stuff out. This is the real deal, man. The parchment paper thing is serious, right? I wouldn't have necessarily believed it if you had just put a regular graphic up there, but when you rip the parchment paper out, man, this is serious, serious stuff. And the reason plays ball, yes. he and Madison came to play on that Constitution thing. And the other thing I'd say to you is to remind the president that the states are not an agent of the federal government. In fact, one of the things that was really argued about in the Constitution was the independent role of the states. And we are not agents as governors of the federal government in elections. We are the people placed in charge of the free and fairness of those elections by the Constitution and trusted by the people. So as much as some people might like to be Donald Trump's agent, I don't think the 50 governors see themselves that way. Governor Christie, great to have you back on the show. Have you on, you Willie? You shot a gun. Look at you. Unbelievable. Look at you. Look at you. So you never age, Willie. Look at me. I'm old, but you never age. It's incredible. It's the team in the back. They whip us into shape at this hour. By the way, that parchment, that's the same thing I used to do at George Washington Middle School in Ridgewood, New Jersey. You light it on fire a little on the edges and make it look old. Yeah, we got it all figured out. Let me ask you, Governor, going back even a little bit further to your role as a U.S. attorney, we're talking about independence. The states are independent from the federal government.